The real magic of AI is going to emerge in capacity to serve and not cost to serve.
How is it different working at Google from a lot of the other companies?
Great brands are usually built on some concept of exclusivity. It has always built around discontinuities.
One brand in the B2B space that you really admire?
I think Amul built an extraordinary brand. Did it through fantastic storytelling and relevant storytelling.
Give any advice or suggestions or recommendations to your fellow CMOs? What would that be?
It's important to understand your position in the P&L. I see myself more as a musician who does some marketing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the CXO Show. The CXO Show is a show that features some of India's most successful professionals in an array of different professions. But of course, the CMO edition is about featuring marketing leaders that have done something exceptional both in the Indian and global landscape. The objective of our show is, of course, to pass on some real implementable and practical learnings for anybody in the audience coming straight from the practitioners, right? Because very often we have very, very long LinkedIn posts and a lot of different videos that come up, but rarely are the practitioners speaking. So what we want to do through this show is bring in these practitioners and pick their brains a little bit so that professionals, both young and senior folks, can learn something, take something back, and the show can be useful for them. Today, I have a leader that's had an exceptional career. When I was going through his LinkedIn, I'm like, it almost looked like a perfect career to me. It seemed very well thought through, great stints at different companies at different times. I have Krishnan Chatterjee with me, and I'm going to do a quick readout of his intro before I bring him in. So Krishnan Chatterjee is the head of marketing at Google Cloud India. Krishnan is a seasoned business leader with over 25 years of experience across ITC, HCL, SAP, Markets and Markets, and now at Google Cloud. He's known to blend brand storytelling with demand generation to drive real business outcomes. I think that's been the common thing across all his stints that he's had. Krishnan led global brand and demand programs at HCL, built one of the region's most admired B2B brands as the head of marketing at SAP, and helped scale Markets and Markets globally as their COO. Now at Google Cloud, Krishnan is at the forefront of shaping how Indian enterprises adopt to AI and cloud technologies to unlock business value at scale. Welcome, Krishnan, to the show.
Thank you, Swapnil. Very kind introduction. And when I look back, I don't think anything was planned, but I'm glad you think so.
That was actually my first question to you, Krishnan, because when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, what struck was the fact that you've done relatively long stints at each one of the companies that you worked at, which is always a good sign, right? It shows that you were actually trying to build something through each one of these companies. And when I look at your career, it almost seems like a perfect match of the right companies that were scaling at that point of time. So did that just happen, or was there some amount of planning and thought that went into it?
I would say it, I can't really credit it to much planning and thought, Swapnil. I think when I look at, let's say, my work life or my purpose in life in generally is to have a good time. And the work part of that life, having a good time, seems to have had commonality with seeking discontinuities and change. So as long as things are moving, there is a discontinuity to focus on. I've been excited and engaged and interested. And I think the story of my life as career is every time I've got slightly bored, I've made a move so that I can discover one more discontinuity to latch on to and have some fun with.
That's such an interesting thing, Krishnan. Rarely, when I talk to senior professionals, CXOs like you, if I ask them purpose in life, they generally give a very intellectual answer to it. I think you've simplified it extremely well for us, saying, listen, my purpose is to have a good time, which extends both in my personal life and my professional life. I want to do it in both spaces, and every time I hit some kind of a roadblock where I don't feel that leads to a career change of some sort.
Yeah, not so. Actually, the problem is it is not philosophical. It is not deep.
Yeah.
but that's the truth.
Yeah, that's the truth, right? That's interesting. Krishnan, today you work at what is possibly the world's most well-known brand, and I know Google Cloud is one part of the Google universe that is there. How is it different working at Google from a lot of the other companies, given that it's one of the world's most well-known brands in the consumer space, and of course that extends into the business space as well. So, how has it been different working here versus at the other stints that you did?
So it's a very good question, Swapnil, and remains to be seen how long it takes for me to get bored at Google.
Mm.
Uh, Google does have some very, I can call out three very interesting differences, but
Mm.
let me take a step back and base it on
Mm.
something that might be interesting to your viewers.
Yeah.
Typically, as marketers, when we look at great brands are usually built on some concept of exclusivity. So think of any brand you think, an Apple, a BMW, or what have you. The power of the brand is built on the fact that you have access and a lot don't. Google is interestingly a great brand with enormous desirability, but it's used at planetary scale by everybody you know. That to me is a conundrum, and I've been not that I've figured an answer out, but there are three things that strike me as potentially part of the answer. The first is, I think Google has built itself completely around users. So it has created extraordinary value for users. And just because of the value it creates in the multiplicity of businesses that you have encountered, it becomes highly desirable. So, and I think one of the best ways to understand that is even within Google. So, when you look at branding, the most legendary film that Google has to me as a brand film is something called Hello Sophie or Dear Sophie. And I don't know if you've seen that. It's over a decade old or it's a decade and a half old. It's actually a film created by one of our colleagues in product who was working on Gmail. And it captures his usage of Gmail to chronicle his daughter's life by sending emails to an email ID he created for her. It's just evocative of the fact that it's a brand completely built around the user experience. So that I think is one interesting facet. The second thing is, I think it's been a brand and a business which, and going by my personal preferences, it has always built around discontinuities, right? So if you go back to the commencement, search was a discontinuity, YouTube was a discontinuity. This whole piece, the maps was a discontinuity. Android was a discontinuity. In the cloud world, what it's doing with AI and what's happening, not just with Gemini, but this whole platform approach to AI through Vertex is a discontinuity. Waymo is a discontinuity. So I think Google prizes discontinuities, unlike most other businesses which seem to prize operations. So in most businesses I've been part of, it is the 80-20 rule. The discontinuity is the weak signal hidden in 20% of the businesses. And everybody is focused on the 80. This is genuinely a company which looks for those hidden signals and does crazy things to go after, and consequently it ends up changing the world not once, but if you see the instances I've narrated to, each of them was a change the world instance.
Yeah.
It seems to be changing the world every 5 years since it was born, right? So that's the second part. The third part, which I find interesting about the company, is the culture is not the typical hustle culture we are used to, right, in enterprises. It's more of a creative culture. The way it manifests is everybody I meet in this company has a significant sense of humor. They don't take themselves very seriously. That strikes a chord with me because I see myself more as a musician who does some marketing than otherwise. And so those are three things. those, to my mind, encapsulate the difference as I see it right now.
Very
It
good.
may change once I get bored, Swapnil. Let me warn you.
That's the humor we're talking about. So, Krishna, I'm just going to do a quick summary because what you've shared is, I think, gold for marketeers possibly watching this show, right? Because I think you started off by saying most brands are built on exclusivity. This is the one brand that differs from that because it's used as widely as any product on the planet ever made. And you thought that was for three reasons. Number one, user at the forefront of everything and providing value to the user at the forefront of everything. Number two, a focus on discontinuity or genuine innovation in some way, right? So, which is, change the world kind of innovation or discontinuity, like you called it, very important. And I think all of this happens because of the third thing that you mentioned, which is the culture which is in place, which is one where you almost spoke about the dream that your founders spoke of, right? They spoke of creating a place which seemed like a college campus with some of the brightest people in the world, right? Where there's work happening, there's play happening, there's all those things happening, but all with engineering and creativity at the heart of it, right? In some way, right? So it's good that somebody working for that company, I don't know how many years down the line, still echoes that view that that's how
Hmm.
it genuinely feels, and that's possibly the reason for the user value and the true innovation that this company brings about. Krishnan, you have worked at Indian companies probably for almost half of your career, and you worked for global companies probably for one third or half of your career. What have been the big differences that you've seen in these two? And I want you to be as honest as you can be. That seems to be something that you do anyway, but just tell me, so that what I want the answer to give largely Indian companies is a way to look at their cultures, right? Because I think all of us aspire that so many companies in India go on and become global companies in the years to come. So tell me, what are the differences that you've seen and what can we learn from that?
Yeah, not an easy question to answer, Swapnil, because
Mm,
I don't think you can generalize
mm.
easily.
Correct.
So when you say Indian companies, I've been in three, which is
Mm,
ITC,
mm.
HCL, and a startup called Markets and Market.
Got it.
And all three were dramatically different in culture. So I will make an attempt to
Mm.
sort of abstract
Got it.
and give you the way I see it. I think the first thing,
Mm,
global companies are typically good
mm.
at playing the long game.
Mm. Okay.
And not that there are no quarterly pressures and all of
Yeah.
that is there,
Yeah.
but the way investments are made
Mm.
and the views taken can be as long as 15, 20 years out.
Mm. Very interesting. Yeah.
Right? I think Indian companies, for a variety of very good reasons,
Yeah.
cannot operate on that sort of length
Mm.
of horizon.
Mm.
And and a lot of the differences then may
Mm.
point towards this, these
Mm.
fundamental, sort of dimensional difference, which
Yeah.
is end of the day,
Mm.
Indian companies are way scrappier
Mm.
than
Got
global
it.
companies,
Yeah.
and they can create things out of. So with Indian companies, the power of human endeavor
Mm.
to overcome constraints
Mm.
and to create value is extraordinary. I think with global companies, the power of a horizon
Mm.
and the genuine belief and investment
Mm.
behind discontinuity and intellectual property creates value over a period of time. So,
Mm.
to an extent, Swapnil, I also tend to believe that in the age of AI, not in terms of
Mm.
the foundation, but in the
Mm.
application,
Mm.
I think these two phenomenon
Mm.
are going to start evening out. So
Mm.
I would expect the application of AI in
Mm.
unique ways
Mm.
to be built out of Indian companies and give them a platform to
Mm.
really create global dominance.
Mm.
Potentially not in the foundation. As you're seeing, the
Mm.
foundation again.
Mm,
requires literally hundreds of billions of dollars of investment
mm,
to which you cannot claim a payback,
mm.
let's say, any immediate horizon.
Such an interesting answer, Krishnan, because if I had to summarize, can't generalize, of course, because and ITC would be so different from an HCL, would be so different from an Infosys, right? So definitely can't generalize, but global companies, probably because of the investment capacity also that they have, right? The cash reserves that they're sitting on at the moment tend to play a little bit of a long game. And like you said, the Indian companies sometimes don't have the same luxury
So,
and are doing that. But on the flip side, what that leads to is the scrappier nature, like you said, which is very, very important. It may not be the classic jugaad that we're speaking about, but just getting more out of less is probably what we get trained on in some way, which is very, very important. I think that's one thing. I think the other thing that you threw light on, because I have more questions on that, is relating the same thing to the foundational models on AI possibly being built by the global companies and the application layer of AI dominated in some way by the Indian companies. Do you think that's also because we have years of experience delivering on applications? The Infis, the TCSs, the HCLs. Do you think it's because of that, or do you think it's something else that will play a part there? And do you think it will be these incumbents that will be the leaders in the AI application layer, or do you think you're going to see brand new players, the new services companies that are going to emerge? Tell me your view on that.
again, very difficult to answer, Swapnil. See, if I
Yeah.
had these sort of visions and answers, I would be an entrepreneur making a lot of money. I can assure you, if I was an entrepreneur, I would be flat broke.
Yeah.
So, right, I can give you my best guess. So,
Yes.
my
I think all of
thought,
us, Krishnan, are making our best guests right now, right? Including, some of the AI leaders also. They're like, listen, we're just making our best guesses on this thing. So let's go for it.
the caveat I'm offering you is there are many people whose guesses are way better than mine.
Yeah,
So, you must
yeah.
color what I tell you with that. But my
Yeah,
sense
yeah.
is,
Mm,
it's India's problems which will drive this wave.
mm,
India has problems
mm,
that very few. Let's within the world of Google. Let me take one example, right? So today we are working with Protean and shipping DPI in a box to many developing countries.
mm. Could you explain that in a
Now,
simpler
India's
way for
digital
what that
public
means?
so the whole digital public infrastructure that you are today used to, the JAM, the trinity of JAM, the whole payment solutions, Aadhaar, UID, that whole digital stack that India has built is now immediately being just switched on like an appliance in many countries, especially in the developing world, because the problem it solved is a tough problem. Not everybody has the scale of that problem, but India has. And I think in the age of AI, I have this theory that the real magic of AI is going to emerge in capacity to serve and not cost to serve. Traditionally, technology has always solved cost to serve, which is the typical benefits of automation, efficiency, and so on and so forth. But capacity to serve, the best way I can give you an example is I recently did a post on LinkedIn about this. Is say an engagement we did with Manipal hospitals. So at Manipal Hospital, what we did is, in a shift change that a nurse does, nurses typically were taking 70 minutes for the handover process during a shift change. That has now come down to around 20 minutes. Now understand that India has about 300,000 nurses. 300,000 nurses every day on a shift change, saving 50 minutes. Now applied to how many more patients you can take care of. Similarly, again in healthcare, India today to provide adequate healthcare to all its citizens requires again estimate something like 600,000 more doctors. We can't produce them. But you could take an agent and put it in the hands of a graduate in every village, and you can start getting 90% of that healthcare. In tech language, we call it L1, L2, L3. All your L1, 100% the agent can take care of. So this is capacity. Now you apply capacity to serve thinking, put it on food, agriculture, education. Right? We just did an agentic AI hackathon over the weekend in Bangalore,
Mm,
which
mm.
has gone into the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's
Wow.
largest agentic hackathon ever done.
Mm,
Over 2,000 developers hacked in BIEC in Bangalore.
mm,
The winning solution was a team which built an agent to
mm,
enable multi-grade teachers to teach
mm,
students using an agent. Now,
mm,
put that in the context of, so what I'm saying is, if capacity to serve is where the real value of AI will emerge, India has huge capacity to serve issues in everything, right? In our power, in our transportation, in our agriculture, in our education, in our healthcare. I think so. If I go back to those, simplistic statements, why was Uber so successful? Because it
mm,
found a problem that
mm,
resonated. India
mm,
has lots of great problems in the capacity to serve bucket.
mm,
So as we solve those problems, or as our entrepreneurs solve them, they will
mm,
build solutions which are
mm,
extraordinarily relevant for the rest of
mm.
the.
That's such an interesting answer, Krishnan, because that also means, and take your best guess again there, because typically when we think of IT services or even AI application for that matter, we always have thought of it as a export of some sort, right? So I think the view that you have is, of course, it will be an export, but we will use so much of it domestically to solve the big problems that we have, because we have a country of 1.4 billion people, and therefore as a developing country a lot of different problems that need to be solved locally, and AI is something that can really make that happen on scale, right? Krishna, I keep thinking of the one place where we don't talk about how AI could help is the legal system, right? Because for a country to really
Right, yeah.
become a, yeah, so I have a feeling that the minute you know we have entrepreneurs really trying to solve that problem, you can imagine our courtrooms looking very, very, very different, right?
Again, the
And
capacity to serve issue.
Correct, absolutely right, and there's lots of great work. So I think AI application is something that India and Indian entrepreneurs would be very good at. I think the second insight from what you said is it will not just be a good export, but it will also solve a lot of our domestic problems, which are there. Very interesting take, Krishnan, on it. I want you to wear, Krishnan, your marketeer's hat for a minute and tell us what parts of AI are overhyped for the marketeer, and which places are you seeing genuinely great use of AI as a marketeer, right? Because, and I'll tell you where this question is coming from. If you're a Twitter or X native like I am, you just see so many threads by so many people talk about, oh, this is going to be disrupted by AI as a marketeer. Marketing teams are not going to be required. Marketing heads are not going to be required, so on and so forth, right? And often, of course, they're very clickbaity, and I fall for those clickbaits. I want you to wear that marketeer's hat and tell me, where is it overhyped right now? Because we don't know how the future will look. And where is it of real good use for you? Any kind of AI, whether it's the agent layer or the foundation models.
So maybe let me preface this with a
Yeah.
couple of points. First, as a marketer, I want you to think Iron Man and not Skynet.
Mm. What do you mean by that?
So, in Iron Man, there's a guy in the suit.
Mm.
Skynet just creates a Terminator and
Mm.
sends it back in time or whatever. So,
Yeah.
think about the fact, to my mind, Hollywood made the best AI film of all time. So, the best advertiser for AI is actually Jarvis.
Mm.
And it's amazing, right? So, you took a
Mm.
product ad and you made it a
Mm.
blockbuster in Hollywood. It's quite
Mm.
extraordinary.
Mm.
But the way you have to think about AI is there is a man in the suit, and that's when it
Mm.
becomes,
Mm.
really high impact.
Got it.
The second part is, if you know Demis Hassabis, who heads
Mm. Yeah.
Google DeepMind,
Yeah.
Demis won the Nobel Prize last year for AlphaFold, and he leads all Google's AI research. Demis was recently on 60 Minutes. He made a very interesting comment, which really caught my imagination, unintended. So he was asked, Demis, what's the difference between human and AI? And he said, at the end of the day, only one thing, it's imagination. Humans will be able to imagine a reality different from what exists today. AI will become the ultimate pattern matcher of what has already happened, and therefore, basically, the next best action, the next best step. But it is breaking the pattern, the discontinuity will still belong to humans. So, maybe one of the fathers of AI commentary is John Lennon. Take that as you made. So, the third part that I think we need to think about as marketers and maybe connect it to these two is, as a marketer, if you think about AI from a toy perspective, here's a VO3 and let's make new videos, or here's a data agent and I can do some analytics, or that is not an Iron Man approach. And that does not also speak to the capacity to serve problem that we discussed earlier. I think as a marketer today, you have to think about a new operating model for marketing, which means people, process, and tech, all
Mm,
three are going to transform. And in that transformation, see, at the end of the day, marketing does three things, right? So we do some form of analytics around data, ideally to identify who is the ICP, how should you set up your funnel, such like. You create multiple variations of content, whether it's TVC, social, what have you, content. And the third part is you connect the two through campaigns. That whole model can now be done through AI, through a new operating model. And let's say one of the capacity to serve challenges as a marketer you need to think about is personalization. Today, instead of me talking, and let me, from today's, let's say, pretty much mass marketing approach to personalization, there is a stage in between, which is, I call it the stage of 10,000 segments. So, as a marketer today, the reality is you are broad brushing. So, if I'm Pidilite, for instance, one of my key segments are fishermen in Kerala, because my marine adhesive is seen to be very valuable to them. And if I can call out fishermen in Kerala for marine adhesive as one segment, imagine now I can put 5,000 more such segments. I have the
mm,
ability now to speak to them individually
mm,
with value that is contextual and absolutely for them,
mm,
as opposed to a broad brush message from which I hope they will
mm,
take away what value means. So I think as marketing now, we can redefine value
mm,
through a new operating model.
mm,
And marketers who think like that will be at the
mm,
forefront of the AI revolution. Marketers who think that here's a tool and I can use Gemini or I can use any of the other tools in the market and take some of my transactions and offload it to AI,
mm,
they're unfortunately then perpetuating the
mm,
reality that
mm.
you may not be needed.
Wow, man, Krishnan. Every time you give an answer, I need to sit back and like gasp a little, process the answer, because there is so much, so many interesting things that you've said here. Yeah. I'm going to take those 10 seconds.
But please,
Very interesting, because if anybody watches even this segment, there's so much for them to pick from this, right? So I think you started off by saying man in the suit is important, right? It's not just the suit, but the man in the suit, which is important. And that combination of suit and man is what, or woman in the suit is what is going to give you a great result, right? And I think that breaks down to saying that don't just think of AI as a fancy tool, because that's the way a lot of marketeers are already looking at it, right? So, I can make so many videos now. Who cares, right? About so many videos that you can make. In the end, the consumer doesn't have endless time. And I keep, making this point again and again. This morning, I was reading an article on AI music, and since you said you're a musician, I want to touch upon that later. But AI music, and I'm having a discussion with somebody saying, right, I there's if today human beings hypothetically with the use of technology make 100 songs, with AI they'd probably make 200 songs, right? But the amount of time Swapnil has to listen to music is still the same, right? I still can't listen to more than 30 minutes of music a day, right? So now what's going to win is whatever wins, wins. Tomorrow, if it's a human and AI putting the best song together, beyond the point, I don't care, right? Because I, as a consumer of music, I want the best song to win in some way, right? But I still have 30 minutes because we can create more music. Doesn't mean that I have more time to listen to it. In a similar realm, right? If you take the same kind of context on marketing, you could make 100 new videos, right? But listen, your customer, the fisherman that you spoke about, is not going to sit and watch your videos because you have a new toy, right? As a marketeer in your hand. And I think as a byproduct of that, what you said is so important as to, I think the biggest change that AI can genuinely bring and add value is the personalization bit, right? Because that's when it becomes really, really effective, right? For somebody. And Krishnan, the interesting thing is that very often we forget what marketing is truly is in some way, right? Marketing is about, you have a great product, and in a simple way, you expose that great product to somebody that genuinely needs it and remove the friction from the buying process in some way, right? So the great product reaching to somebody really who needs it, and the persuasion of friction removal needs to be done there, right? Now, when you talk about personalization, Krishnan, that's exactly what that will do, right? So, like you said, the fisherman will know, oh, this is how I can use this versus just watching something which is, just generic and doesn't work. Okay.
Yeah.
But Krishnan, are we there yet, or do you think that that's 2 years down the line, 1 year down the line, or do you think marketeers can already do this with the available resources which are there, and especially tools that are there?
So Swapnil, I think the way I see it is what
Hmm.
is this thing is coming very fast,
Hmm.
and as they say, the light at the end of the tunnel may be
Hmm.
the headlight of the onrushing train. So you know, think about it like this. Today, let's start very simple, right? Your
Hmm.
consumers,
Hmm.
that process of discovery is now beginning to change
Hmm. Tell me a little
because of
more. Yeah.
AI overviews and such like, right? So
Hmm.
think about your consumers using AI
Hmm.
for a moment.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, naturally, if you think about your consumers and customers starting to use AI,
Hmm.
one fundamental shift you will start seeing, which I assume you are now beginning to see in your own buying behavior,
Hmm.
is the move from engagement to intent. Today, a lot of your discovery is engagement oriented because you need to look around, talk to a lot of people, see a lot of posts to form your own opinion. But today, when I put, say, a Gemini deep research to work, it does the amount of research which I could never have done as part of the engagement. So the AI is already feeding me to the level of intent. Now think about it like this. You're traditionally used to a funnel where top of funnel is a huge amount of what we tend to call MQLs, which are a product of engagement. What is now going to happen is that top of funnel will shrink because it is being delivered not from engagement but from intent. The consequence is your funnel conversion rates are going to jump significantly. So that the typical marketer celebrates those hundreds and thousands of MQLs. But if you continue that down that direction, what happens to the business is your growth is not capital efficient anymore because to both create that huge top of funnel as well as to engage those through the funnel takes cost, right? So when we talk segmentation, personalization, all of this is going to fundamentally change the nature of the funnel that you as a marketer drive, which is now going to require you to change the way you operate.
Yeah.
Now, the tools to change that are
Hmm.
already all available. Because
Hmm.
as I said, at the end of the day, there are only three things.
Hmm.
There's analytics, there's content, there's campaign. All tools are today available freely for
Hmm.
you, but you can either choose to engage those tools in these three siloed pillars, which you today engage in separately,
Hmm.
or you can say, I'll re-architect the way I work so that
Hmm.
I'm doing all of this simultaneously
Hmm.
at the level of 10,000 segments.
So interesting. So interesting. So big takeout, especially I guess, and this I'm assuming will apply to both B2B and B2C businesses, which is the top of the
Broadly.
top of the funnel really shrinking, and because that shrinks, the conversion rates going up. right, automatically, because the people at the top of the funnel will be more high intent than otherwise, because of the AI research that they will pre-do, right, and
Yeah.
have a lot more answers. And therefore, for capital efficiency, you need to get that top. So that's such an insightful answer, Krishnan. What are you doing? What have you done differently? Give the marketeers on this particular who are listening to this, give us something where you said, this is what I've done differently, which you can share, of course, because I see this happening. Give us one example if possible.
So I've started shrinking
Mm,
that top of funnel desire. So one example I can offer you
mm,
is, see, typically at Google Cloud, we do this mega event called Next,
mm,
which is in Las Vegas. And then
mm,
post that event in every country, we do what
mm,
we call a summit. And the summit typically has multiple thousand people. This year, we didn't do the summit at all.
mm,
Instead, we did a roadshow of three
mm,
C-suite level events
mm,
in Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore. Now, in these events, we
mm,
actually propositioned around a business model shift
mm,
rather than talking about our products. And we engaged significant speakers from
mm,
these customer C suite. So,
mm,
over 60 customer speakers, which is quite a lot. But
mm,
what is most interesting is for
mm,
every one of the speakers, we used AI to deliver a transformation document for their business model in an AI based future. And I was able to do this because using the tools we have available, I could generate that document for any company in 4 to 5 minutes. But it's
mm.
extraordinary. One of the CEOs
Yeah.
during the call, so in the briefing call, I'm sending this note out, which I have
Mm,
generated while the call is running, a 20-page document on their business transformation. I
mm,
got a comment. I won't mention the name of the
mm. Yeah.
consultant, but one of the big three, he
Mm.
said, I would have paid $1 million to get this report from one of them.
Wow.
You did it
Wow.
in 4 minutes. So I'm saying this was possible, but it was done as a totality, as an operating model shift,
Mm,
as
mm,
opposed to saying, let me do one thing at a time. So not
mm.
transactionally, this was a complete operating change.
Got it. Can I summarize my understanding of it, and then
Yes.
you tell me whether I've got it correctly? Because this is such an important point that you shared. Because you think top of the funnel doesn't need to be as big as it used to be and needs to be more focused, you thought that at an experiential and on ground event level, getting fewer people but more senior people was a much better use of your resources, of your marketing dollar or rupee, than just getting a whole lot of people in the room, because you wanted to get people that are decision makers, so to speak, right? Is that's one element of it. And second element of it is, how when you go to them in today's world as a marketeer, you can go to them much smarter. You can go to them with
First,
solutions, at least first cut solutions of what you think, right? And like you said, generated within 4 minutes because of a lot of back end work done, of course, but then generated within 4 to 5 minutes, which becomes a good starting point for you to have conversations with your customers. Is that a good summary, or have I missed something?
yeah, no, you've missed nothing. And just to give you the outcomes, all this
Yeah.
happened in the month of May.
Yeah.
And the month of May gave us 2.5x, the largest pipeline month in our history. So, whatever
Wow.
was our largest pipeline month in history,
Yeah.
this month of May 2025 was two and a half times that.
Wow, that is so interesting, Krishnan. Oof. Okay, I have another question for you. All right, we talk about AI and the impact of AI. In the world today, Krishnan, as a marketeer, how important are these on ground activities, right? And by which I mean physically getting people in a room, right? Tell me from a B2B lens, is it still important? Has it gone up in importance? And of course, I'm assuming all of them need to be strategic in nature. It's not doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. But have you seen that move in importance, at least in your view as a marketeer?
Yeah, so, so I have a view on this, maybe right or wrong. Again,
Yeah.
I would put on ground in presence as a marketer. The
Yeah.
criticality is dependent on intent.
Got it. Okay.
So the minute I bring a lot of random people together
Mm,
just to feed them dinner and have a have a good time, it is
mm,
not usually productive. But so, for example, I would say on ground, very good,
mm.
usually when it's done first party.
What do you mean by
I'm
that? What do you mean by first party?
I'm very reluctant to get into third party event. Somebody else is doing a video,
Mm,
come and
mm,
sponsor something. Usually,
mm,
I
mm,
don't find that productive because I
mm,
will not find intent. Again, it is that. So I'm just creating these two schools of thought for you, Swapnil. There
mm,
is the
mm,
engagement school and there's the
mm,
intent school. For
mm.
the engagement school, get into events, socialize, etc. Great idea. For the intent school, I want to do smaller ones where I know the people coming into the room have intent. So, say account based marketing.
Mm,
Those sort of use cases and scenarios very good for on ground.
mm, mm. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, of course, events work, but in your experience, especially when it comes to the high intent bucket, and in this new AI world, that becomes, engagement versus intent becomes a very important thing. Doing smaller things help. Doing things which, in a way,
Let me
yeah,
give you an example from a
yeah,
different world or something
yeah.
that these holiday timeshare kind of companies
Mm, mm,
do a lot of these events, right? I've
mm,
attended, randomly they called me
mm,
and they were next to my house
mm,
somewhere in South Delhi. I
mm,
just walked in. They don't know who I am. I don't know
mm,
who they are. So
mm,
I walked in, had some snacks,
mm,
heard out,
mm,
but I had no intent whatsoever. So if there was a digital process by which you prove intent and then you walk into the room, they would have done this more productively because also by having me along with 200 other people that they had, my individual experience was also quite poor. And I'm sure they would not have the bandwidth to follow through with me, given that I'm as far away from intent as it's possible to be. They would now need to invest a lot of time to. So I'm just saying, progress people to intent before you get them in a room.
got it. And then when you get them in a room, small sizes work well, not part of some big initiative. And you said doing it yourself versus some third party event where there are multiple different sponsors and multiple people talking to them about multiple things doesn't really help, right? When you have your own thing, which is very,
Because
very
that
focused.
splinters, again, that splinters intent and
Yes.
puts you back to engagement. So just therefore the caveat you have to understand,
Yeah.
Swapnil, is I am in the intent bucket. And that's also you have
Got
to
it.
understand because I'm with Google, right?
Hmm.
Supposing I'm with a company which does not have a brand like this, it may be an imperative to actually start at engagement because basically nobody's heard about you. So I just think what your brand is, which stage it is, will also determine. So absolute no absolute answers to this.
Yeah, yeah, and as marketeers or business people, there are never any absolute answers, right? Everything depends on the situation at that point of time and
Correct.
which company you belong to. Krishnan, you've been so insightful. Throw some light on how somebody graduating out of college and is interested in the field of marketing, right? Very clearly, what would your suggestions be to that person who's straight out of college and they say, hey, listen, Christian, I want to, over the next 10 years or whatever it is, I want to get to the levels that you got to as a marketer. I want to become a CMO, right? That's my aspiration in some way. What do you tell them today? Give me two or three suggestions that you think are very important to young marketeers.
So my suggestion is, let's say when I started, right, I joined
Mm,
ITC. What did I
mm,
do? My first experience was launching Bristol Menthol. I think it was Bristol Menthol
mm,
in Jodhpur
mm,
in August.
mm,
I used to ride a cycle and take point of purchase material in stocks and go
mm, mm,
panwala to panwala, positioning and selling the stock and
mm,
putting up the promotional material in roughly 50 degrees centigrade.
mm.
I was hospitalized on day 4.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and but what was happening there? I was using the tools of the trade, as it were,
Mm,
to understand the trade itself. And to an extent in FMCG, perhaps that's why an ITC or a Unilever or companies like that build strong leadership and legacy, especially in fields like marketing, because you start by using the tools of the trade at the time. My suggestion right now is those tools have dramatically changed. So my first recommendation would be, and obviously AI is at the forefront of those tools. So start learning and become, and today, a generation born digitally native, all this will come very easy. Master those tools, right? So if I was speaking from a Google Cloud perspective, on the data side, master tools like BigQuery and Looker, at least from a usage perspective. Master content creators like Imagen and VO3 and so on and so forth. And obviously, even Gemini 2.5, which is extremely good, not from perhaps content creation, though you will get all of that bundled in, but from analytics and such like. Look at Google's PMax from a campaign perspective. How do you distribute content across multiple campaign types? And so, my suggestion is just figure tools out and master those tools right now, and then work with the leadership to deploy them. So, you will probably work with leaders who have that imagination and that vision, but may not have mastery of the tool itself. So, help them drive their vision and imagination through these new tools so that you are now starting to experience a new kind of the operating model I talked about. That should set people up for a great future in this.
Got it. I think what's interesting is that, and I don't know how this changes. Earlier, the tools which were relevant would remain for a while, right? So for an architect, for the longest time, they used AutoCAD, right? And then they, just did upgrades of AutoCAD, and they had to learn incrementally. I think one of the interesting things that's happening today is that the AI tools are changing, improving, evolving so rapidly that I think any young person must take learning the tools constantly as their literally number one activity, right? Because what worked last week, today you could have a tool that is much, much superior to that, right? And that could be the one that you need to use, right? So I think the focus on learning is going to be a constant one in the age of AI, and especially around the tools for a person to be relevant.
And the other part, going back to how I started that story, Swapnil, is the other dimension was exposure to consumers.
Mm.
And today, I think, again, tools can help you expose. So you don't need to walk the streets of Jodhpur in 50 degrees centigrade or cycle those streets. You can sit on social and you can sit on analytics tools and understand more deeply who your customer stroke consumer is. I think that is the other part, build mastery. And because when we discuss personalization, segmentation, all of that, there'll be very deep customer and consumer knowledge. More importantly, the how of getting to that customer consumer insight knowledge, which is now way beyond those old days we had of let's do some quant research, some qual research,
Yeah,
wait
yeah,
for 3 months before we know anything. Those
yeah,
days are gone. Now in near real time, you will discover and
yeah.
understand your consumer.
Yeah, that research part, hopefully, some other day, that's an interesting world in itself, right? As to how probably research would happen, 10, 15 years down the line, where we would go by what people said more than how they actually behaved. I think in today's world, you can get straight to how are they
Very good.
behaving or actually
Yeah.
acting versus what they say, because often there's such a big difference between these two, right? Which is an interesting subject for another day. Krishnan, tell me about, what do you have to say to fellow CMOs, right? And I'm asking you this, and please give me a good answer for this, as you have through this entire interview. It's been such an amazing interview with you. But what suggestions do you have for your fellow CMOs? And again, the reason why I'm asking you that is because you're, in a way, working at a company that is in some way at the forefront of this entire AI revolution, right? You're there, so you have a front seat view to what's happening. So if you had to give any advice or suggestions or recommendations to your fellow CMOs, what would that be? Because when I talk to them offline, so many of them are so worried, right? Because they're like, man, I have a team. Do I need this team? Everybody's talking about smaller teams. Are you getting my point? So they're so caught up in what am I supposed to do as a CMO when the entire world is changing all around me, right? And often that leads to rash decisions or not very wise decisions, right? So if you had, being at the forefront of this, what are your recommendations, suggestions to your fellow CMOs?
So only Swapnil, again, very very different. You are asking these hitchhiker questions, and there is no 42 I can offer.
Yeah.
Uh, but I, again, the guess I would make is, to any CMO, it's important to understand your position in the P&L. If you are in the bottom part of the P&L, you are a cost structure, and in the age of AI, you will get optimized. If you are in the top part of the P&L, you are a growth center and you will get invested in. So I would just say figure out where you are with brutal honesty. To a large extent, a lot of CMOs who say things like, I built fantastic pipeline, but sales doesn't go and close. They will be in trouble because then you are basically putting yourself into the lower part of the P&L and you will get optimized because end of the day, the business won't care that sales is not closing your pipeline. Sales may be closing some other pipeline. And so on and so. So I would just say study that position and figure out the transformation required to move into the top part of the PNL. And I would also say that somewhere, you may not carry this mantle in entirety, but think of the concept, the new way the world will evolve is through the concept of capital efficient growth. Uh, you have to see your role in that growth for the business. So, those days of, those legends of 50% of my budget is wasted, but I don't know which 50%. Those are dangerous statements. So,
Hmm.
just be very clear where you are in the PNL and how your narrative links back to capital efficient growth.
Hmm. Krishnan, I love how you preface every answer that I ask you saying, hey, I don't know anything about this. And then you give the sharpest answer to that question, right? So I think that's amazing because, the fight between marketing and sales, right, is been on forever, right? And I think what you're also encouraging all marketeers to, take responsibility for the final outcome and not just the pipeline that you generate, right? Because if you don't take responsibility for the final outcome, then you will be treated as a cost versus a growth center, right? And which is what, ever since we probably started our careers, it was like, oh, but I'm giving you the pipeline and you're not closing it, right? That's a very, very insightful way in which marketeers need to think. And I think the focus, Krishnan, that you have on capital efficiency, because you mentioned some version of that through this entire discussion, I think that is going to be at the forefront of just about everything, not just marketing, right? It's going to be whether it's marketing, whether it's operations, whether it's customer service, in each part of a business with AI coming in. I think there will be questions on capital efficiency for sure, right?
Yeah.
And I think marketers also need to kind of brace themselves for that and not seek refuge under saying I don't know where 50% of my spend is going, right? David Ogilvy said that a long time back, but we're still using it as marketers. Krishnan, what's an Indian brand? Tell me one brand in the B2B space that you really admire and that you think have done a really good job in establishing themselves as a brand, right? And tell me one in the B2C space that you really kind of admire and why.
So Indian, you mean?
Yes.
So in the B2B space, I must say, uh, it doesn't need to be a business, right? So to my
It could be
mind,
anything that
yeah,
you think have done an amazing job of brand building, right? I'm not even talking about the core business, nothing. Just the fact that they've gone about establishing a brand very well.
yeah. So my answer to that is Nandan Nilekani.
Hmm.
I think Nandan's built an incredible brand, not just with what he did at Infosys or starting from Thomas Friedman's World is Flat, all the way to his DPI work and what he's doing with the Step Foundation. He's seen today very clearly as India's CTO.
Mm,
and India is seen as sort of the technology powerhouse in
mm,
the planet. So
mm,
that is one fantastic brand
mm,
that has been built largely, I would call it, in the B2B space. In the B2C space, just because that's where I look at creatives
mm,
and speed and relevance. And I
mm,
think Amul built an extraordinary brand in this
mm,
country.
mm,
Did it in a very capital efficient way. So as
mm,
we go back to that theme, did it through fantastic
mm,
storytelling and relevant storytelling. So
mm.
I do think the way Amul has taken their brand to market is a very good lesson for what we need to do in the coming years.
That's such an interesting thing. I also feel every time I think about Amul Krishnan, I feel it's a very good combination of genuine product innovation, right?
Mm.
At all points of time. And sometimes genuine product innovation is also that quality at that price point, right? So
Yeah.
it's not just a totally new to world product that always succeeds, right?
Yeah.
But they do genuine product innovation at the right price points given their Indian context. That's one thing. I think the second thing which I find so interesting is there are certain things they keep on doing because they work, like those good old billboards that we see. I still see them, right? And they keep that going because they know that in some way also built their brand. And they're also doing new age things, right? So it's not one or the other. It's not some marketing head or marketing team saying, "Nee, nee, wo to purana ho gaya, we're not going to touch that. Why do we do that?" Right? That respect for knowing that, listen, this is old but really works. There is a charm to it, right? There may not be a performance metric around how a billboard is working, right, for you, but I think they do that combination quite well.
More importantly, Swapnil, the amount
Mm.
of people who share their communication.
Yeah.
I think I think one thing marketers today must wake up to is your brand is not what you say about yourself, but what customers say about you. And so
Yeah.
gone are the days of launch my TVC and I'm the greatest and that is brand building. So I
Mm.
think Amul's pulled that off very. It's the only brand I see out on social media where
Mm.
people pick their stories and it's like the purple cow effect. If I look at Godin's purple cow theory,
Mm. Yeah.
I'm hard pressed to tell you an Indian brand which
Mm.
has a higher purple cow quotient than Amul.
Yeah, I think absolutely right, and category after category. So clearly there is some secret sauce there, right? Because I was speaking to somebody about now their protein milk and their protein based products. Listen, they're not on the shelf. Yeah, they're flying so quickly off the shelves. They're just realizing that, and getting into that and creating like the perfect product market fit for their products, doing it again and again. There is some real good secret sauce, right? So that's a good example. Krishnan, tell me about your music. You said you're a musician caught in a marketing role. I don't know anything about. I've watched a few of your interviews, read a few things about you, but tell me about a little about that.
Not a lot to tell. Uh, I used to have a band called
Mm,
Contraband.
mm,
We have an album out there called Currency.
mm,
Uh, I think that album sort of was the pinnacle of what we achieved, and job done. We
mm,
disbanded.
mm,
Uh, the music was written,
mm,
or the philosophy with which I used to write music is firstly, as a genre, we called it white collar rock.
mm,
The thought being that in rock, which is largely blue collar, was
mm,
all about railing against the system.
mm,
But in the white collar world, you are the system. So
mm,
what we did is we railed against ourselves
mm,
through an idea that tries to think of as create, not just consume. So basically, the whole thing was, your true north
mm,
would be because of you, the creator, something
mm,
like music for me or something else for you. So,
mm.
and there's a bunch of music written around that idea. It's out there, though I must, in all frankness, let you know that if you go and listen to our music,
Mm,
you may be the
mm.
fifth person to do so. No, no. Let me be factually correct. There were
Yeah.
seven members in the band. You
Yeah.
may be the eighth person to do so. But if you're interested, it's out there in Spotify, Apple.
Wow. Christian, do you still do you guys still perform as a band? Do you all still play? And again, the reason why I'm asking that is, I like when people have hobbies, often without an objective, right? Hobbies without an end goal, right? Where you're just doing something just because you enjoy it, right? You're playing not because you're getting paid, but you're just playing because of the joy that you get out of playing an instrument or singing, so on and so forth. So do you still perform? Or is it
I,
now
I
yeah,
No, I do, Swapnil. So there are
yeah.
two couple of some friends of mine did do a couple of things interesting, which I
Mm,
think intersect our two worlds. The first
mm,
is in Gurgaon, we now have a community called Addicted to Music, ATM.
mm, mm,
So ATM is basically a community for professionals who also are musicians. And obviously, the community is much larger than just these individual friends,
mm,
families, such like.
mm,
So you'll find it on YouTube. Just search
mm,
for Addicted to
mm,
Music. There are monthly gigs. So
mm,
last Saturday of every month, there's a concert in Gurgaon
mm,
where people come together and play.
mm,
And then there have been offshoots. So ATM and all of these are people like us,
mm,
corporate professionals,
mm,
etc. So there
mm,
are offshoots. Multiple bands have come out. I've done a few bands here and there with members of ATM. So that's one interesting thing that
mm,
happens. The second one is I have a friend called Vishal Malik, used to
mm,
be in McKinsey, is now in Carney.
mm,
So Vishal is an outstanding singer in Hindi.
mm,
He and I do this fairly interesting thing, and we just do it for fun. But for friends or for companies who are interested, we turn up and we create a session out of music,
mm,
which is targeted at some of the themes or strategies
mm,
that those companies want to communicate. So, for
mm,
example, a couple of Sundays back, we did this for I Am Game, which is a
mm,
sports platform created for the entire sports industry, where we used music and McKinsey quality slideware
mm,
to talk about the five imperatives for India to break
mm,
through in sports,
mm.
stuff like that. So those are some of the threads that keep running on music. So it's always there, and just like you said, it's best done without an outcome in mind and
Mm,
purely for pleasure,
mm,
which again gravitates against enjoying it by
yeah,
making the first choice for career, which is when it
yeah,
brings all the stress. And
yeah.
so my one of my realizations is focus career doing your second love rather than your.
Wow, I think that's such a good idea because I've never used these words while communicating this thought to people, but now I have the right vocabulary to use it thanks to you, because the amount of times I've told people that sometimes that when you make your passion your profession, you end up
Mm,
putting a lot of pressure on it, right? And then you stop enjoying that one passion that you had. And the second thing is, I think people shouldn't think of passion as just one thing, right? You can be passionate about multiple things, right? And
exactly.
this framework of saying, maybe make your second love your profession and keep your first love as just as your hobby passion
Correct.
can lead to a much more fulfilling life. And like you said, the focus is on having a good life, right? I think that's where we started. Krishnan, we've run out of time, but I'm saying this with like absolute honesty to you that this is one of the most enjoyable conversations that I have had. Of course, we touched upon a lot of things in marketing, but you are absolutely so insightful in everything that you say or do, right? And which is amazing that you have that kind of insight. And more than anything else, I think you know how to live a good life, right? More important than anything, I think you've managed to do that very well, right? And that speaks about something which is very, very important to me. I hope to interact with you a lot more going ahead, whether it's a podcast, but you have such interesting things to share that I'd never want to have a one-on-one with you without recording it, right? Because I'm like, yeah, whatever you're saying, a lot of different people can learn from it. But it's been a real pleasure. It's been a real honor. Thank you very much, Krishnan, for taking out your time to have this conversation with us.
Thank you, Swapnil. I've enjoyed it, and I must say, great questions, great summaries, great moderation. So, what you've done today, AI could not do.
That is such a good ending note. Thank you. Thank you very much, Krishnan.
All right. See you. Bye
Bye.
bye.